Okay, people. So this is season 4, episode 1. I want to say welcome to the conversation. You guys already know I told you that we're going to be having some great conversations this season. So I have 3 individuals here with me today who I know they're just going to. I don't even know what to say. I'm excited. I am afraid just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. But I am super excited to be here today. I say thank you to everybody who's been supporting me over the years and welcome to the conversation. So it is going to be hot because literally we are hot. But anyway, I am going to turn over to my guests and they can introduce themselves. I'm going to start with the mayor of Cheverly, Mayor Casey. How are you?
I'm great. I'm not here in the capacity of mayor. I'm here as a friend of the show, and I'm so proud of you. I'm happy to see that we're in studio. Casey Munyene.
Okay, Mr. Jahari.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jahari Harris, and I'm just a friend of EJ and just want to learn and grow from this conversation.
Okay. And we have the Mark.
No, just Mark Carr.
Oh, just.
Just Mark Carr. I'm the CEO of Zumbi Wellness. I'm also a reparationist. I'm really happy to be on the show tonight.
So I wanted us to have this conversation because I feel I've had this conversation with you guys separately, like just a little conversation we don't had over the couple of years. We've had Casey on here before, twice actually. So we dive into it a little bit for the last time. We'll talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll talk about that. So we've been into this space for a little bit, but today I really wanted us to talk about culture appropriation. And you guys had to help me because that word, for some reason, I can't get it. But culture appropriation, that's it, versus culture appreciation. Because I think both, I don't know why, I don't think we can talk about culture appropriation without talking about culture appreciation. And so I wanted us, so here, like I said, you guys, you're welcome. I'm happy to have you guys here. So I learned a lot from conversation with you guys. Actually, I really, brought my ears. Sometimes like Mark has helped me a lot because I really needed to understand certain things. And so I reached out to him and I actually went there and sat with him to learn. Why I had this conversation, why I wanted to learn more is because for some reason, I stumbled on this thing where I learned that there's some sort of culture, being cultural appropriate that a lot of us don't do. And so, in your own words, what is culture appropriation to you? And how do you compare it to culture appreciation?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can take it.
Yeah, I'll start. Cultural appropriation is stealing.
Okay.
That's all there is to it. Stealing. It is the taking of shared ideas and values of a group of people, usually for monetization or popularization, um, without giving due credit to the people that is entitled to that credit. It's straight up just stealing. Appreciation is actually giving people credit, saying this came from this particular tribe or this group of people. This is where I got these ideas from, and this is how I was inspired. Giving people the credit and sometimes giving them their money. But appropriation is solely just theft.
Charlie?
I think she summed it up. I don't think there's no need to add to that.
Mark, is there anything?
Yeah, so I actually kind of looked it up, and there were 4 definitions from Encyclopedia Britannica. So I'll go with the number one because I think it's the one that resonates a lot with me. And they define it as a member of a majority group profiting financially or socially from the culture of a minority group is cultural appropriation. So I really love how the mayor brought up. I'm sorry, I know you're not here in that capacity, but I really like how money was brought up because I think that is sort of a real tangible way to kind of see the impact of cultural appropriation. And I think cultural appreciation, obviously, in my opinion, maybe not obviously, but in my opinion, would be giving back to the group. Like if you're profiting from that group, there should also be a way of giving back. And I think that speaks to the equity piece of, I think when you mentioned DEI, I think, if you're benefiting from our culture, it's only equitable and right and just to also give back.
And so I think a lot of times what people aren't doing is educating themselves. And I know there are so many literature out there. There are books. There are so many things out there for people to educate themselves to understand what cultural appropriation is. And so there are some of the books that I have looked over. Like I saw one called Cultural Code by Daniel Coley. You have White Negroes, Lauren Jackson. But my favorite, which I have read, Why Are All Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And I just want us to talk about that because I think it's something that is extremely important. I don't think people pay keen attention to those little details. I know when I walk into a room, I am 100% swayed towards the side where I see people with like similarities. So it might be if I see all guys, I might go over there. If I see all black people, even though they're mixed gender, I might go over there. If I see people who, if what I'm wearing that day, even though they might, if I'm just wearing like a t-shirt and shorts, and it's an event where I realize, oops, I wrote the wrong outfit, but then I see two other people who dress like that, I might go over there too and start talking to them. So when we talk about that book for me, when I read it the first time, I was just like, this is so serious. Like, and the title is not really some of the things what the book talks about. I think it just is grabs you and be like, oh, why all the black kids sit together in the cafeteria? But that's not, oh, why does other black women go to one grocery store for one thing? They get their hair products from this store, they get this from that store. And so if we can just expand on that, why do all the black kids in the cafeteria sit on one table?
I will start because as an educator, being in Montgomery County public school systems, being in DC public school systems, it's your safe space.
Mm-hmm.
Most black people feel that if I see a brother that look like me, or a sister that look like me, or like you said, has the same clothing on, or got the J's on, I'm gonna gravitate to that because that's my safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, when we're talking about kids, especially in urban communities, they want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell, yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it is also part of my lived experience as a black person who went through the educational system. Specifically, I went to high school. I transferred from a majority black high school to a very affluent, private, majority white high school. And to your point, the sitting at the black table, that was our safe space because everything else just seemed so hostile. And even when it wasn't outright hostile, there was still sort of a cultural shock, not coming from those white, affluent, suburban communities. So, yeah, it's definitely like all the black kids sitting at the same table. For us, it was a safe space. And funny enough, I ran into one of my old classmates, and this is from Missouri, and this was here in DC. They were here visiting, and we're both black men, and we talked about how like when we thought about just the trajectories of the other black men that were at that time they were boys, but the other students that were black men in particular, a lot of them didn't make it through the school. Like they left for whatever reason because there wasn't enough safe space for them. At least that's what we assume. So
I think it's fascinating that the two examples you used were school, and that sort of ties to the title of the book because we create those safe spaces everywhere. We create them specifically, like the connection here is the church.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have heard many of leaders say Sunday morning is the most segregated hour of the entire country because
Yes.
we find similarities, and those similarities tend to be steeped in what we look like. I had the opposite experience from you. I grew up going to an all white school as the old black kid. And so there was never going to be a safe space, whether people try to create one or not, because I was the outlier, the weird person. My hair was different, texture was different, how I spoke was different. So at this point in my life, I don't shun away from difference because when I walk through the door, I am the equalizer, right? So I don't care who you are, what you look like. Like we're gonna have a conversation, or maybe it's your personality, but I'm not looking for those things that are the outward identifier anymore. I'm looking for who has a mindset like me. But I recognize that's trained over time, right, in dealing with those different spaces that weren't safe. So like they're sort of born out of trauma. I think for most kids, they don't want to get picked at, right? Like we're talking about bullying today, whereas we used to just do the dirty dozens before and get joned on. Most kids want to be someplace where even if I'm picked at, I know it's in love or joking, not because something's wrong with me or I'm different from the rest of everybody else. So I think that's why you'll see people sort of grouping together, and not just the black kids, but you'll see like the nerdy kids.
Yep.
They'll group together because they just want to be in a place where they can feel like I can be myself without getting picked at.
And I have a totally different experience. I grew up in a space where everybody was black. So, and if you were not black, then you were the outlier. Something was wrong with you. Like, what's going on? So, if you had somebody who was albino, people will look at them funny. If you had somebody who was extremely lighter than all of us, you'd be like mulatto. That was it wasn't a positive term to use as somebody. It was negative because basically we came up with things where it's like the person mother was sold out, she slept with a white man, and in where I'm from, the white people were called white were not even white; they were Lebanese people. So those are the people that were happening. So for me, it was more of just being around all these black people was still not there was still a difference when you go somewhere. You still gravitate to other things outside of just your skin color. And then when I came to America, then I realized I was black. So being black was never a thing for me growing up because that's all I knew. But when I moved to America, then I was like, oh,
America will make that very clear for you.
I am black. So and when I say that, a lot of people are like, what do you mean? You are no. It's a totally different thing being a black person living in Africa and being a black person living in Europe or living, let's say, the Western world. I think it's totally different. And so, how can we? I want us to move and talk more about power dynamics. I think when you talk about cultural appropriation, all that stuff, there is some sort of power dynamics that come with it, and I think that's what it is. And before we go there, I want to talk about this. And so before you guys came, Jared and I were having a conversation. I told him, I said, Casey is married to a Liberian from West Africa, and when I explain this story, he probably have the same exact story. Every African person that leaves Africa, get a visa, get in the plane that comes to America, hear this story. When you go to America, do not be friends with those black, I would say the word, I'm sorry, it's negative, akatas. They are the drug dealers, they are the robbers, they are the this, they are the that, they are the other. You need to find yourself a nice white friend. Those white people are very nice. Let me say it with my Liberian accent. Those white people are very nice. You find them. You live in a nice neighborhood. The white neighborhood, that's a nice, that basically that's what they tell you, right? So you come here. The power dynamics now for us is we feel we're better than the Black Americans or the African Americans because, oh, you guys are drug dealers. You guys are not, then you're lazy over it too. So that whole thing come into play where the rift happens. Because I come and I have an attitude. You see me and say, but why he got an attitude? And then we start fussing for no reason. And so I don't know. And for me, I feel it's like the power dynamics for me when it comes to African Americans and Black Americans and Africans is the fact that we feel, and I would say we because I had the same notion, we are better than. And we feel that the being friends with a white person or being associated with someone who's not black gives us more power over an African American or a Black American.
Ooh, that was a lot.
Is that a question or?
Now
you
I
can
just
it
put
out
that
there?
scenario out there, and I just want you to. How can you respond to that?
If I could, I wanted to just point out how I'm glad you read the official definition because it spoke about the majority over the minority population.
Mhm.
And I can't stress this enough that Black and brown people are the majority of the world, and white people are the minorities. But because they have a position of power, because they have created the systems, particularly in America, that beget power, we think of them as the majority.
Mhm.
So that is critical. In order for you to appropriate, you have to first hold power over someone. So I think that's really important. I think that you said what most people probably will never admit. So I'm grateful that you admitted it because it's part of a dynamic that I've been in some significant African spaces where no one would actually speak to me until they knew I was the mayor. So now that I have a position of power, I'm valuable enough to talk to. I've had church members come to my home and say, "Oh, I thought you lived in the projects," because their assumptions about Black Americans are that we are drug dealers, we're prostitutes, we are the bonquishas of the world, We have several different children's fathers. Like we are the ghettoest of the ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that, I'm not a sympathetic person or an apologist, but part of that is because not just your parents telling you that, it's the images you're shown. So if you leave this country,
Mm-hmm.
what you see is, and no offense, a Tyler Perry movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best you're going to see about Black people. Any movie that I saw, I've been to 5 out of 7 continents. Any movie I've ever seen about Black people outside of the United States has not been positive in any way.
Yep.
There's always the derogatory stereotypes about who Black Americans are. So you don't have the opportunity to even think that we're possibly normal human beings. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you said that the notion is that I think I'm better because I'm assimilated with these white people. Well, guess what? Those white people treat you better.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other part. It's not just thinking it, it's that you benefit. One of the arguments we had to have in our household is like how I get treated differently when people learn my last name, because that's not my first name, right? That's my married name. And when I am Casey Simmons, as long as you don't see me, I get treated very well, like it's over the phone, because people can't really tell, is she Black, is she white, is she male, is she female? With that name, it's nice and, whitewashed, right? Which makes people feel comfortable. But you throw that Muyene on there, and then all of a sudden there's a different level of respect. One, because I'm a married woman, people respect married women more. But two, because there's this assumption that I have been approved. She's dignified. She's good enough as a Black American. And the last thing that I'll just layer on top of that is the same things you were taught are some of the same things that my husband was told before he got married.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll never eat again because they don't fix food.
Mm-hmm.
All of the negative stereotypes, the assumptions about that. And sort of the relief that he got because there was a sort of a caveat, Southern women are better. So at least you got a Southern Black American. Like, we try to find all these different variables for what would make them suitable in society. And the truth is, I don't know any of those stereotypes, like personally. None of those people, I was just sharing that with him. I don't know any man that doesn't take care of his family. I don't know any woman that just has 10 kids from 10 different people and doesn't take care of her family or goes to work. I don't know lazy Black people. Like, for every creation, modern invention you use, a Black person has worked on it.
Exactly.
So where are we lazy? If anything, the argument could be that you in a continent with 54 countries where you have house girls and drivers might be a little more lazy than African Americans, Black Americans, who don't have such luxuries. So I'm glad that there was the admission of that. I would love to see that thought, that image sort of be done away with, because there's enough Africans who've come here and gone back home to say, I can dispel this notion for you, that that's just not really the case.
Exactly. Y'all don't have to. Y'all, it cannot be quiet in here because I know y'all have thoughts.
Oh no, I definitely have thoughts, and going. So I kind of think of it in different terms, and I'm referring to how you framed it before, because you started talking about power dynamics, and when you look at the history of immigration in this country, there has always been this like concerted effort for assimilation, and what that has often meant was assimilating into American culture, which is anti-Black. And that power dynamic, I think, exists and is created very intentionally, but it's because Black Americans found the foundational people, the ones who are descendants of slaves, have always been a threat to the system. Even many of the civil rights we experience in this country today is because Black people advocated and fought for changes in the system. And I think, there is this need to create a social structure where Black Americans are at the bottom. It's a racial caste system. And so in order to perpetuate that, you have to control the narrative. You have to get the whole world to believe it. But in reality, I would say, and this is where I think I would think differently, differently from someone who thinks that being close to whiteness or having proximity is a power move.
Yep.
Because I feel like the real power move is when you are actual threat and you can change the system. Being close to and approximate to whiteness, it just sort of makes you complicit in white supremacy, which is designed to keep you, to subject you, especially if you're a non-white person. They may value you more than a Black American who was descendant of chattel slavery, but there's still that power dynamic where they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're close to us, we got you under control.
Exactly.
We'll give you some crumbs.
Yep.
But the real power move is actually changing the system so that we can have just as much wealth, just as much equity as any white person or anybody else in this country. But when you look at, I'll land on this. When you look at stats from the peer research, they did a report: 1 in 10 Black people in America are immigrants or something like that. They found that even though Black immigrants have similar credentials than other immigrant groups, they were paid $6,000 less on average.
Mm.
So, even Black immigrants are part of a hierarchy. And as long as anti-Blackness exists, we're all suffering. And a
Yep.
real power move is to change that system and make it, something that benefits us in the same way that it benefits others.
All right. So you guys laid some heavy stuff out of it. Okay. But I looked up when you said we start off with power dynamics, and
Mhm.
there's this quote, this African proverb says, "Until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero."
Mhm.
And we started with the title "Power Dynamics." The power is in the images that we've been taught, or the narrative that we've been taught. If we, and like you said, if we begin to not just change the social structure, but the images that we have been taught, then then that's when you gain the power, because you gain the power in here first before you can gain the power out there in politics or in power and any type of social system. You need to change the power of the mindset. That's where the dynamic has to change. That's where the power is.
Absolutely.
And for me, and I know it's, how can I put it? We also, we also were given, like I said, we were given like a different narrative. So, like you said, you, the only movies we've seen is gang banging, those kind of movies. Like I think the best is Tyler Perry. Like that really, he plays the rich. Or we saw the Cosby Show. That was it. Where there was dad was a doctor, mom was a lawyer, or flip around. I can't even remember, but that what it was. And so when we come over here as well, we also see that you guys were also, there was this mind game that was played, because then you also seen where the only things you've seen is poor African kids are begging for food. They show you the Somalia war. They show you all these bad things are happening, and so that's when we get these questions of, do you guys sleep in the tree? Call you African booty scratcher, and all that stuff. Of course, some of the white kids would be afraid to say stuff to you because they probably know you're gonna knock them out. But it was always the Black kids who would ask you this question. You'd be like, "Now, how you gonna ask me this question? Where you think I came from? In the tree?" But then, as you mature and and then you start to read or get educated, you realize that, okay, that's why I started with power dynamics, was because the mind game was played both ways. Because the only way to oppress us is to have us fight against each other.
That's right.
And that's what they do that very well. That is why they tell Mrs. Jones to send that email to everybody else when Paula is the one who really want that to happen, but she gave to Mrs. Jones to send it, because when Mrs. Jones send that email, all the other sisters gonna be like, excuse me, who you talking to? And I've seen that. I worked in spaces where then I was like, I'm sorry, not really gonna send that email. Or you can send it. Oh no, but it's better, when it comes from their manager. Well, you're my director. You can send that email, because I am not sending that email. And so I just feel as like they put us against each other. And this is where I want to also have this for us to leading into this conversation of um I want to know this, and I know that a lot of people want to know this. A lot of us who wasn't born or raised in, well, I won't say race because I was grown, culture. We don't, there are a lot of Africans that I know who really don't know the Black culture. They have no idea what it is. And so when a person of color tell you, I don't want to be called African American, I prefer to be called Black American, some people get offended and say, but we're Black. All Black people come from Africa. Like why are you not, you African American? Like, why are you getting upset? And so I don't know. First of all, what is the Black culture? And this is a question and an answer. Yeah.
Okay, if I could go back for one
Yes,
second
go back.
about your comment, because you said something that was really powerful about how you deal in those certain spaces, which is you refuse, tying it to his comment, you refuse to be a perpetuator of white supremacy
Mm-hmm.
by being used. So that's a responsibility for each person, right? So each person can say, I know that these are the stereotypes I've been taught, but this is who I'm interacting with as a human being, and I don't choose to do that. What you described is very, reminiscent of my corporate culture. There's always only one space for one black woman, and so if there's ever two black women, they are not going to get along on this team.
Never.
Never happened. So the worst people in my life in terms of my professional life have been black women. It hasn't. Every promotion I've ever gotten is from a white man. So it would sound like, oh, you don't have a problem with discrimination. No, there was a reason why those two women, black women, were pit against each other. And each person had a responsibility to say, I'm not going to be used by this system. So I just want to put that out there. One of the things I thought was so important about the creation of the National African American History and Culture Museum is because for the first time, someone, all the powers that be that decided that this museum would exist without federal financing, by the way, they said you had to find your own money to get this museum, finally said that to be an African American, i.e. Black American, because Black American means something different to Africans in America, but to be that and to have that is a real culture. And that thought never occurred to me until that museum was built. And I was like, this is mind blowing. I've gone to India, right? Indian culture in the continent. I've been in Asia that's separate from India, but India's in Asia, right? Asian culture. I've seen white culture, white American culture. Never once was it validated that my culture as an African American, Black American, was real or valid, that how I wore my shoes or my hair, the food I eat, it may be the same collard greens as a African in America, but seasoned differently. Like my culture in and of itself had value. And I think, imagine what that means for adults in this whole trajectory of life and self-efficacy if you don't even realize that your own culture has value until you're a grown adult.
The question was, do we have cultures?
No, I just want to know what is the culture?
As my brother said, it stems. I think our culture stemmed from oppression, but out of that oppression, we created institutions, we created HBCUs, we created organizations. Black culture to me is empowering. Black culture to me is food. Black culture to me is dance. It's music. Black culture to me is revolutionary. Black culture is so much more than, like you said, the stereotypes that we have been taught, or even taught that we don't have culture. A lot of our culture came from the church. That's just one piece of our culture. It came from the church. I think if we really begin to, like you said, educate ourselves and go to the African American History Museum and actually look at the history of our culture and what we stem from. We stem from, as it sounds so cliche, kings and queens are from Africa, but that's the truth. That's the truth. We came from a place of, we had philosophy, we had education, we had systems in place. It's just we're not, back to the power dynamics, we're not taught that dynamic of who we are.
Yeah, this is a good question because I'm a reparationist, so I'm like 10 toes down for my people. Exactly right.
Give me my money. Can I get some?
We're all about economic empowerment as well. And a part of doing the reparations work, obviously, is understanding the history because, we have a justice claim against the government for over 400 years of documented systemic oppression that still continues today. And when you look at Black American history, what I see as a central theme is a culture of change making and innovation. That is, I can use the example of the almost 50,000 patents that come from Black America. We're one of the highest producing patent ethnicity in this country. We could talk about one of our founding mothers, as I like to call her, Elizabeth Freeman, who was enslaved in Massachusetts and actually took her owner to court. And because of that precedent, it overturned slavery in New England. We could talk about the Colored People's Conventions, where Black freemen, people who were free, who weren't enslaved, mainly living in northern states, from 1830 to 1899, met over 200 times at different conventions to create political strategies for the liberation of Black people in this country. We could talk about the almost 200,000 Black Americans who literally freed themselves to fight for their emancipation. That's how the Civil War was won. I don't even have to talk about the civil rights movement or Black Lives Matter or the anti-lynching movements, or even when you talk about voter rights and women rights, a lot of that were led by Black people. So we have this long tradition of political advocacy that leads to change making and innovation in society, and also, in other areas. And it's reverberated around the world. So if anyone asks, like, what is your culture? I think that's what comes to mind for me.
And I know why I asked that, because I have seen too many things happen over the last couple of years, and I have friends who are African Americans, and I listen to them and stuff like that, and I get offended when I see on Instagram this black kid talking about he's a trap rapper, he's rapping hip hop. This white kid, I'm sorry, the white kid, and I'm like, what's going on? Because I personally feel that everything has been stripped away. The the music, they took the music. They took food. The institutions, they want to take it. They want to be responsible for medicine when we're responsible for medicine. We're responsible for all the inventions. And I say we because now I'm in America. And I think I'll get some little reparation money. I know, but y'all, but y'all gonna give me. Well, I know y'all, so y'all gonna give me some of that money. And that's how I feel. And when I say that, people will be like, "But why are you upset?" I get offended. I get offended when I see this white kid is being celebrated as a hip hop artist, a trap artist, and I'm just like, no, that's not for you. They these people have that stuff, and it's not taken away from them.
Best-selling rapper of all time today is still Eminem. So the most palatable of the gifts that we bring to the world is still better received through a white person, because that is the system that has been constructed here.
How do we educate our young ones to not get frustrated? Because I think we are revolutionists. I think the young kids behind us is worse. Because when I went to the Black Lives Matter rally and all that stuff that happened, I thought I was too old. I was way too old for that. Those high school kids and freshmen and college kids, they were leading this thing. So what do we say to them when because I would say we, but I think our fathers and our mothers, they were like, it was some sort of complacency. And if I'm wrong, just correct me.
I don't think there was complacency. I think that just as you are noticing your age, it's not really age that's the issue. For a lot of African Americans, they arrived. And when they arrived and they became assimilationists and they got their house and their dog and their picket fence, the movement stopped, right? So that's for those folks, or maybe for the young folks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you saw people who don't have jobs at those rallies. That's why you saw young people who weren't in school at those rallies, because they don't have anything to actually lose, right? But if I have a top secret security clearance and that's how I'm able to pay for my mega mansion over in certain suburbs, I'm not going out there. I have to make a choice. Do I want to be able to assimilate with society and continue to be honored when I go to brunch on Sunday? Or
this is so annoying.
Or do I want to be a radicalist? And my belief is truly that, everybody thought a tide had turned when George Floyd was killed. And I'm like, I knew that was a moment in history, and that was it. Because ultimately, we survive off knowing that we're better than somebody else. Even the lowest person on the of the totem pole, we need to know that we're better off than that person. And that's the construct that has been created here. And that is not tied to racism or appropriation. That's tied to capitalism. If you want to do anything, you can follow the dollars. Because I hate to say the reparations piece is so critical, but everything leads back to the fact that I don't get the same spending power as you. Everything leads back to the fact that even if you're one step above a Black American, that still means that you have better access to resources than I do. In the careers that I have, and I've had multiple jobs for a number of reasons, one of those is the economic piece to that, I'm able to look at real estate and see how all the immigrant population are able to live together, save money, and purchase homes. Because of the divide that's created with Black Americans, you will never see that. I think I've seen one or two families that would actually live together, which is a very immigrant thing to do. before they can purchase a home. So you have people spending $2,500, $3,000, $5,000 in rent when they could be able to purchase a home. Now, when I talk about systems, one of the activities that I did with someone I used to work with was I went to a bank with them, and I was like, "What do I get qualified for?" I think I shared this story with you
Yeah.
before. And that person had lower credit than me, less of a down payment, made less money than me, and still qualified for a higher loan than I did. There's no other justification for that other than there's a system in place to say, once you mark that box that you are black, that you get treated differently, even if nobody can see you, just because it's on paper. So when we boil things down to, how we treat each other, that to me is the secondary. How I get treated on paper, how I make my paper, that makes a difference. And because that makes such a difference, we won't have those change makers. I love the generation I see because they don't care about anything.
Lord.
And that's terrible, but that's also,
it's scary.
it's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I would say to your point about our parents being complicit, I think it may be a little bit. Maybe I'll use the word docile just for illustrative purposes, right? And to your question about young people being frustrated, my advice to them was, yeah, be frustrated and take action. Like make change. I'm a social entrepreneur. I love entrepreneurship because it allows for a certain level of freedom that you don't get when you're working. And I also have a W-9 job as well. But being an entrepreneur gives you a certain sense of freedom, and there has been a tradition of entrepreneurs leveraging their position and resources to fight. And what I would say about the complicity thing, we have to realize that over the past 50 or so years, at the tail end of the civil rights movement, they killed a lot of our leaders. They killed a lot of the radical people like Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, and so many others, right? Even people, all of these Black Panthers, how they infiltrated and disbanded that organization. You still have political prisoners today. You had another segment of Black society that were middle class and educated, and the civil rights afforded them a lot of opportunities. And they said, okay, yeah, this is great. The Democrats came through. I'm gonna just keep voting blue no matter who, right?
Yep.
And then you have another segment. This is the segment that I'm most in love with. Those are the forgotten, downtrodden, poorest of the poor, who society continue to see as a threat. These are always the people on the front line in our movements, willing to get beat and tear gas and whatever else. And our society created or expanded its criminal system apparatus to really take, there's a statistic from the Hamilton Project that said that if you are a Black male who does not have a GED or high school equivalent, there's a 70% chance that you'll be in prison by the time you're 30 years old. 70%. So there's a place for you. I can go into how manufacturing dried up, and that was the base of many working class Black communities, how that was outsourced, and how what replaced it was a system of criminalization and mass incarceration. So I think now that we have the young people's attention, it's time for them to be frustrated and take action. And I'll land there.
Well, we've had some great conversation. It's time for us to make some money. So let's make some money.
These Bubbles & Co. believes in creating your own style with your accessories. Our collection of Afrocentric and Eurocentric accessories allows you to do just that. Our beaded collection features the Maasai beads of East Africa, the rich patterns and vibrant colors of the African wax print fabric, gives you options from clutches to hats. We understand the assignment when it comes to accessorizing.
Break, people. Yeah, we needed to make some money, but we've made some money. Go to D Gems. Online you can get some nice hats and stuff like that. You can also go to the Instagram page. It's D Gems, DEEGEMS. You can go to their page. You can go to the Instagram page and the Facebook, and you can get some stuff. But we are still on this conversation. I want us to swing another way. So in March 2016, an African-American woman at San Francisco State University confronted a white student. She said he should cut his hair because dreadlocks belongs to Black culture. The incident went viral. Within a month, that YouTube page went to 3.7 million views. I bring that up. I have seen white people with dreadlocks. I have dreadlocks. It I, it confuses me. That's why I'm just gonna say it. It really confused me because I'm just like, okay, natural hair connected to the black culture. Black, good hair, bad hair, like all these things goes through my mind, and I'm just like, oh wow, why is this happening? And so I don't know if you guys have experienced anything or if you heard about this story, if you watched it and stuff like that. But when I see something like that, I go back into that space why I feel it's like, what can African Americans, Black Americans really take and say, you know what, this is mine. And you're not going to take it from me. We're not going to share this. And I say that because as an African person, I have mine. I have mine. Yeah, you can. There are so many things that I know that it's just Liberian. Like if I suck my teeth right now, nobody will understand why I suck my teeth. She will because she's married to a Liberian man. Well, in like we say this thing, a Liberian person, means a lot of things, but it means a lot of things to only Liberian. That's something that it's ours. And I don't know if I'm making sense. There are just certain things when it comes to certain cultures that it's theirs. Like nobody can try to duplicate it, nobody can use it because it's just theirs. And so I bring that up again to say, how can we, as Black people living in America, as African American, really work on securing what's ours?
I'm confused. Well, I'm gonna let y'all talk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let you go because I know I probably over. I don't want to over talk.
No, you good.
Okay, because when you say what's ours, I'm confused because you also made a distinction about being Liberian.
Yeah, no.
And then
As a Black person living in America, what? Okay, so let me go back. What is for Black Americans? How can Black Americans or African Americans secure what's theirs?
I think she made a great point when she said she made the comment about Eminem and how it's anything we put out there it's received better by white people.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, hands down, if God has given us creative gifts, it's not for us to keep. You give and you share that gift, and what comes what may from that gift or uh, whatever. I don't think we're given gifts. I don't think we should hold on to them and say this is mine. I got to hold on to this. I think He's given it to us to share with the world. It's just people have not respected the gift or not appreciated the gift, but why hold on to it? If it's something that's unique about you, and I want to imitate that because I like the way EJ dresses, and I like the way he wears his suits, and I see that about you. I think that's a good thing. It's just I'm going to give credence to you, but hey, I like the way you dress.
So I think that's the most. I think for me that's the important part of it, where you're going to give credence to that person. So you appreciate them. Like we talk about the cultural appreciation, because I think that's where the Eminem being the best or whatever, or the best rapper, or the most million sold, or whatever that the track, whatever his track is how do I put it? He's riding on the train of other people.
So I would offer to defend Eminem for one reason.
Go right ahead.
Because he was literally fostered by Black rap artists,
That's
right?
That's right.
And so he doesn't play the game of not acknowledging who brought him into the field and made him famous.
Okay.
Now, what I don't know is what he does with his money, because I'm always going back to my brother over here. Run me my money, because I don't even mind the appreciation. You keep the appreciation, send me my check,
I
right?
agree.
So aside from appreciating me, give me my money.
Agree.
Pay me for what you're benefiting from that I gave you. And when we're not talking about rap music, we're talking about literally every genre of music that has ever been created has initially started from a Black person, right? If you look at country music that Black people can't even break into now,
Mm-hmm.
solely started from the slow parts of R&B, rhythm and blues, the storytelling components of all of that. So if you look at those previous artists that you heard on the radio, and all of a sudden you saw them on TV, and they're two different artists, like we've all seen how that was stolen from us. To answer your question, I would argue there's nothing we can have. Absolutely nothing we can have. I think it's a beautiful approach. It's a very Christian response to share your gift. But I think Black Americans are taught from birth. There's nothing you can have, not even your own safety. not even your own agency as a human being in this country. Like you can't have it anywhere, right? But something that you said that I think is really powerful is there is one thing that we do better than anybody else, and we own that. We are magical. You can give us whatever crap you want to give us, and we turn it into something special and magical. You give us the worst part of the meat, we turn it into pork loin. We turn it into fried chicken. We turn whatever crap you want to give us into something that everybody wants. And that is a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with having a superpower and people seeing you as magical is they still don't see you as human.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on this thread because I appreciate the brother's response, but I actually think very differently. At least in this day and time in the reparationist age, I think Black Americans need to start gatekeeping. I think that is would be my direct answer to your question.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when I hear, because I've been all over the world, and even when I hear people rap in different cultures, it's not quite the same.
No.
You know, when I go to Europe and they're playing jazz, there's a bunch of white people, and I'm like, what is this? It's not jazz. So I think there are components of that original culture that's still ours that we kind of feel and know, I think, in ways that maybe other groups don't. And the reason why I say we need to gatekeep, I'm going to bring up two stories. I actually pulled this up just for this conversation. I want to raise two sort of like incidents that happened recently. The National Jazz Museum in Harlem had a whole celebrating the Afro-Latin roots of jazz. So they were basically taking credit for the roots of jazz, which is just not true. Without any sort of like real documentation saying, okay, these are the Latin artists that are at the root of jazz. They're just like saying, oh, now before there was Afro Latin jazz or whatever. Now is they're claiming to have actually created the genre, which is just not true. Another example of that is recently with Fat Joe and Busta Rhymes were now claiming that Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans helped create hip hop, which is not true. They participated, but they didn't create it. And it was funny because in the on Black Twitter, you have people showing videos all the way back from the 1890s of people rapping and doing forms of breakdancing, and they were asking these people who were claiming that Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans invented it. They're like, well, where are your receipts? None.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why we got to gatekeep. I think it's part of Black American culture also to be loving and to be, open and, to be giving. But, in the age of reparations, if we allow people to now claim that take credit for things we have done, then what's not allowing them to also say, okay, well, I suffer just like Black people. We're all the same. So y'all owe us reparations too.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you my fear about being a gatekeeper. And you may say it's morbid, but the reality is they'll kill us for it. Because they do. So if you don't perform for me and let me steal from you, I will make you perform for me or I'll kill you. And we see that day in and day out. Whether it's how police interact with Black people, how we are in neighborhoods where people keep talking about gun violence and nobody can explain to me how only this gun is made in a particular spot in Russia. How does it get to this particular neighborhood? Somebody brought it here. Did they go to Russia?
Mm-hmm.
They went to Russia, right? So whoever you saw with it, that person didn't go to Russia. How did they get this weapon? Or how we have evidence and proof of how there were government officials that infiltrated the Black communities to bring crack cocaine during the crack epidemic. Like, whether we like it or not, we have seen time and time again, generation after generation, if we don't give what we have, you'll kill us for it. And that is something I think is unique to Black Americans. Because if you're an immigrant to this country, you came from a place, I ask my husband this all the time, did you ever feel afraid in your home country just because you were Black? And that's a distinct difference. He's never felt that because everybody was Black. So I see what you're saying. Not everybody's invited to the cookout, right? But if we don't acquiesce, then we continue to see ourselves in the news as murdered people.
And my response to that would be, every change that has been made in this country, specifically for Black people, someone's had to shed blood. And this is why I really, respect and honor our ancestors and this is why I do also think we have to kind of gatekeep because I think it's so disrespectful. Because of all the blood that was shed, when you spoke, sister, I thought of Sam Cooke. As soon as he tried to take ownership, they wiped that brother out. So, even Dr. King, it was right when he was developing the Poor People's Campaign. That's when he got, assassinated. So it's so disrespectful for us to allow other people to kind of claim our culture and claim our experience. Because as you said, no one has had that experience. Now, other
No.
people have suffered. I'm not saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that other Black people haven't gone through colonialism and other forms of isms or whatever that is. And I also respect and honor that. But the Black American experience is unique, and it's an experience that spans centuries. And this is why I do think of us as a very separate group, because we are an amalgamation of different people from across Africa, as well as other indigenous and white or whatever, that have had to coalesce around this Black identity and fight back for everything we have in this country. And no one else has ever had to do that. We can't unfortunately share the immigrant story. America wasn't a place that we immigrated to for opportunity. America was a place where we created the opportunity, but then we're shut out of it. So that's a very different, mindset. And that's why, like, for me, I think you're so right. And it's sad, that we have to share blood to just have access to, full access and ownership of the things that we create.
I want to hop right back to
Go right
your
ahead.
dreadhead comment, because the truth is, there's nothing more dangerous than a woke white person, right? Like, that's the moderate that Martin Luther King was talking about. And that's the person who thinks they're your friend.
Yeah.
That's the person that you've invited to the cookout. Until you hold that person accountable and say, hey, I'm noticing some things about you that maybe you don't see. So I had a conversation with one of these folks, and my intention was solely just to have an awakening, where they said, I completely understand that I got this position because I was a white person, and I feel guilty about it. There were tears shed. And so I started talking about weaponizing of white tears and what that does, because really what I want us to boil down to is, if you know that you got this because you were white, why don't you deny yourself and say, I won't take it? When do you say, I understand cultural appropriation, but I don't have to dread my hair. I don't have to do that, right? That's not part of my original culture. I can appreciate it and not take it. When does the self-denial take place? And I don't think that will ever happen on a global concept. But I do want to point out that that person probably thinks that they're woke, that they're your friend, and that you have a shared experience. Remember, culture is supposed to be shared, to your point.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be shared across people. But only if you actually see me too. You can't just run me my money. You can't just appreciate me. You have to see what it is, and that my hair was dreadful, that they had to pass legislation for me to be able to wear my hair the way I want to.
Yeah.
Like, you have to see that part first before you can decide to take part in it.
And that leads, I don't know how many minutes we got left, but that just leads into the space where I like what he said when he talked about the different experiences. And I think that's something that I always talk to my friends, to my African friends, to let them understand, when they want to do all these things. I'm like, no. You have never experienced what Black Americans have experienced. Your experience is different from theirs. What you can say whatever you want to say, and we had this conversation before where I told somebody, I said, we can all be Black. I've seen this multiple times where you go to. I've literally sat in the ticket court to see this, and you go there, and the judge sitting up on the bench, and he's calling everybody to see what happened, and everybody come and see what happened. Someone who's African goes there, when he hear that person's name, everything changes. His tone changes. The questions that he asks. So why were you speeding? Oh, okay, we're gonna nudge you down to this. So what was going on? Why were you speeding? You go into this whole conversation. When a Black American comes, or an African American comes there, he's very blunt. Oh, so I see you have 4 or 5 tickets. Why did you have this ticket? And it goes into this whole technical space. And my friends were like, why were you saying that? I said, because everybody they don't experience the same thing. Everywhere you go as an African person, or as in a Black American or African American, but your experiences are different. I don't know why it is. Like I was telling him, I said, even if you get pulled over, the cop will walk over and realize that you're Black. And then, but once you start talking and hear an accent, the aggression go down a little notch. It goes down a little bit. They're still there, but it goes down a little bit. He treats you differently. And then I've been asked, so what did you do for work? So would you like? It becomes like a whole conversation. Why are we having a conversation? Like, I need to go. Run me my ticket. Let me go. And then I have friends who said, "Who American? Why to be pulled over?" And they don't have some experience. I'm just like, what? Pull out the car, search the car because they had a broken tail light, and they search the car. Is this your car? But and going to this whole thing, and so that's when we talked about slavery or we talk about oppression in America with black people. I love to tell my African people, like, stay out of that lane. That is not your lane. You don't need to be having. You don't need to say anything because. But we're all black people. No, we're our the color of our skin is the same, but our experiences are different. And so there is no. You can't relate to something that you have no experience of. And final words from anybody.
I think it's really key, um, and I don't think we'll ever get there. And I don't think we'll ever get there because of my own faith and upbringing. I'm a Christian, and so Satan is real, and that like the best thing he ever did was to convince people he doesn't exist, right? So just because we're a fallen state and we're fallen people, I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we see each other as human beings. Um, the thing that is so saddening is to operate in the function of being a human, forgetting that other people see you as subhuman. Because I don't think of like when I walk out the door, I'm like, I'm a bad chick, I'm doing my thing, I'm working hard. I don't ever stop and think, oh, this person sees me this way. I don't see myself in those stereotypes. And so my hope is just one day we'll stop seeing each other that way. Because I don't see Africans in those stereotypes. I don't see white people in those stereotypes. I just see my sister or my brother. And I hope that one day we can get to a place up on the hill where we actually have the same common ground. And I know that that's just a dream.
I think I would say, going back to the topic, cultural appreciation. I think we, as Black people, Africans, we must begin to appreciate ourselves, appreciate one another, begin to, again, like the Black Panther thing, police one another, look out for each other. I think that's, like Sister said, is once you became educated and you got yours, it's like, okay, you get the rest of it. But at the end of the day, we have to begin to just go back to the basic human of just appreciating each other. And I think then we'll begin to see when they see that we appreciate each other, when they see that we respect one another, when they see that we do have love for each other, then possibly we could see the reparations and everything else that comes with that.
And they can run you your money.
Well, as a reparationist, my last words is going to be to really check out what's going on in California, AB 3121. That was the task force to make the reparations recommendations. There was also a recent bill signed by Governor Newsom. I forget the name of the bill, but basically it allows for the disaggregation or delineation of data of Black employees. So delineating from, and this is for state positions, delineating from the descendants of the enslaved and everyone else who's Black. And this is super important. Like how we identify ourselves, particularly for the reparations movement, is important because you need delineation so that they know these are the group of people that were harmed. And not only do they know that these are a group of people that were harmed, they can also see the data that shows the different experiences that you spoke to of descendant of enslaved people compared to other Black people who recently immigrated to this country, because there is a difference. There's all kind of studies from Pew Research and that shows those differences, even though the data also demonstrates that we are all dealing with some form of oppression. But for us, it's very specific because we are a specific group. We have a specific justice claim with the government. And as far as appropriation is concerned, I think the biggest thing you can do right now for us, and I'm speaking as a reparationist, is respect those differences, even in how you identify yourself. Because if everyone just gets called Black American or African American, it does muddy the waters. It makes it like, okay, all of these people are having the same experiences when we're not. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and also just want to thank you for creating a space for this conversation.
Well, I appreciate you guys. This was amazing. It made me sweat a little bit. I don't know, it's an uncomfortable conversation. I think a lot of people aren't willing to have these kinds of conversation. A lot of Africans like me aren't willing to be honest and say the truth about certain things that have we have ingrained in us that we expect to be the truth. And so I really appreciate you guys for coming here, just pouring out and teaching us all. These three people, y'all always give me knowledge, so it's just a lot. Y'all need, I don't know, we probably need to collaborate and write a book, but I'm just talking. But you'll see. And thank you guys for watching. This was, of course, the conversation Outspoken Opinionated. Of course, I'm your host, Edwin Maya. This was a great conversation with Casey Munyene. I had Johari Harris and Mark Carr. Until next week, Thursday, I see you guys next week. Come on, because it's going to be another great conversation. Until next week, you guys have an amazing, amazing Thursday. And I see you when I see you.